let's test out this Paul Rubens set of 108 pastels, and I'm going to walk you through how I painted this colorful sky with exclusively this set. Let's dive in. Let's talk about this Paul Rubens set that they sent me to test out for them. So this is 108 colors, so this is a pretty large set of pastels, and I like this brand because it tends to come at a more affordable price point. So let's open it and talk about what they've got in there, maybe how they feel, and then we're gonna do a painting. Let's dive in. I always feel like it's hard to get the lid off of boxes. So we've got a nice color swatch for you. This feels a little bit like a watercolor paper, maybe a little bit thinner. You could swatch on here. You may not get the exact same result as you would in pastel paper because it doesn't have a ton of tooth to it, but this will give you a really good sense of the pigment. It's always my favorite part. Just pulling them off. So a lot of really good colors here. So the first thing I'm noticing that I think is a little different about this set from a few of their smaller sets is that there's more darker values that I'm seeing in this set. So for example, and when I talk about value in art, if you're not familiar, value is really how light or dark a color is. So we've got a lot of very light values up here, a lot of pretty dark values here. Value is sort of agnostic of the hue or the actual color. So a dark blue, dark black, dark green, all sort of the same value, which is just a helpful thing to know. So at first glance, this leans really heavily on the pinks and the yellows, even into the oranges, which is nice. A lot of good blues here. What I don't quite see for somebody who paints a ton of landscapes are a lot of the warmer greens. There's definitely some cooler bluer greens, which are really pretty, but I'm not seeing as many of the sort of warm yellowy greens that I may want to use. But as I look at this, the first thing that occurs to me that this is going to be a great set to paint some really colorful sunsets or some really nice florals. So let's dive into them. Let's see how they feel. I've got a little scrap paper because I've usually cut my pastel paper down a little bit to paint on because I like to paint small, to each their own, but I like to paint small. So let's see how they feel. Size-wise, these feel a little bit like a half stick size. So like a half stick of Vanilla comparably, which I kind of love. I honestly, I think a lot of pastel artists really end up breaking their pastels in half anyway. So don't be afraid of sets that have these sort of smaller half stick sizes. I'm gonna start out with this red. These feel pretty lightweight, which is kind of nice. Very smooth, not too buttery. Let's see how it blends. This is nice. I like this. They're not too dry, which is great. Let me just grab a rag here. I usually tend to wipe my hands off with a dry rag as I go. It doesn't take all the pigment off your fingers, but it does allow you to kind of keep working without having to constantly wash your hands. Let's take a look at this really dark blue because it's been eyeing me. I'm noticing this one's a little bit harder. So I think, honestly, like a lot of brands, you may find that some of the pigments behave a little differently. I'm guessing just due to what the pigments are made out of. Let's try this white. A lot of people don't like to use pure white. I do. I think it's a really critical way to help make things glow. Of course, I'm turning it pink because I have pink on my hands. This one's a little bit softer than the blue was, but really nice. These pigments are coming out beautifully. We'll take a look at the green. I like these. These are really surpassing my expectations. Okay, this is a nice set. Let's paint a sunset together. So this is my reference photo. This is just a really beautiful, vibrant sunset. We've got in the top left, you can see that the blue is a little bit darker there and there's some highlights underneath the clouds. That's telling us that our light source is really coming from below. And we want to pay attention to that anytime we're painting clouds or really any sort of landscape scene. Where is our light coming from? So that's something we're going to look at. I'll also say that I'm painting this for the first time while we're making this video.
So you will probably see me make mistakes. You're really going to get just a behind the scenes look at my process, and hopefully we'll be able to pull together something nice. You may have also already noticed that the audio quality in parts of this video are a little inconsistent. Be nice, I'm still figuring it out. I'm going to get better at that, I promise. So stick with me, and we're going to make some beautiful paintings.
So I'm going to start with just this darkest blue up in the corners. I'm going to blend a lot of this right now. What I'm really doing is just getting some pigment down. Sometimes I actually found this with many brands, this particular dark blue can struggle. It might just be what the pigment's made of. And then I'm going to layer in sort of another blue, a little bit grayish blue. This is probably closer to what most of this is going to look like. This one's nice and soft. We're just kind of blocking in our colors. Sorry if you hear people outside. It was garbage day where I live, so everyone's putting their garbage cans away. Got a little bit of purple in this section. I'm going to start adding that in so that it feels really smoothly blended by the time we actually start adding in details. A little bit of the lighter blue here. I'm actually going to use this just a brown. We're going to go over this in a little bit with a little bit of purple, but I want to get a warm kind of undertone going here. This set doesn't have quite the purple I would normally use, but that's okay. There's always a way to do all of it. Okay, so we're going to start blending now. I use my hands. I know not everybody does, but it's just my vibe. Just gonna slightly clean off my hands. I use just a dry rag to clean my hands as I go. Just takes off some of that excessive pigment. Just blending. And a little bit I'm going to add my horizon line. I normally do that first, but truthfully I forgot this time. So I'm going to come back in with this brown again, because I want to start getting more of a sense of where this is going to go. I like to layer in my darkest colors first. And forgot to mention, so this is UART sanded paper. It feels, if you aren't familiar with it, it feels pretty much just like sandpaper, but this is really meant for art. You won't get quite the same result if you go to Home Depot or your local hardware store and pick up regular sandpaper. But that's also a great thing you can do to practice, for the record, because this is not exactly inexpensive paper. I'm going to start bringing in some pinks. This is kind of a dusty rose. I like this. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know clouds can be a very iterative process. So we're going to layer in, we're going to blend, we're going to layer in some more, and we're going to blend some more. And that is a normal part of this process for me. Maybe I'll get faster at it as I get better at painting, but you know, you live and you learn. And I'm kind of blending in the direction that my clouds are going to go. Start bringing in a little bit of lighter blue here, some more. adding in a little bit of light. As I get closer to my horizon line, the sky is getting lighter, which is why you see me bringing in this little bit of a lighter blue, purplish blue, kind of a periwinkle. And I'm gonna bring in some yellow here because I actually want this set doesn't have quite the like light muted green that I would normally use here. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of a light yellow to start helping that transition into that deep golden orange that you see along the horizon line. Now this is gonna look like an absolute mess for a little while. And if yours does too, it does not mean that you're doing it wrong. I think no matter what medium you work with, every painting has sort of an ugly stage. And that is not indicative of you doing something badly. It does not mean you should quit the painting. It means you should keep going. See how we're getting a little bit of that green to help transition from the blue and the green? I like to use a lot of fingers at once, mainly because it's helping me keep my fingers from getting too rubbed, or any one particular finger from getting rubbed a little too raw. This is sort of my ending color here, is this golden pastel. I'm just going to bring it in here. Oops. You can see that these are sort of starting to come together, albeit we have a ways to go. But we're just really getting in our basic shapes. We're going to add highlights and details later, but just getting in our basic shapes. I'm going to go just one depth value darker at the very bottom here. Really start to see that transition. This area here, knock the paint, even though it's a mess, that's going to be our horizon line. We're going to add sort of some silhouetted land. We're not going to do anything dramatic there because the focus of this painting is really the clouds. Come back in. You'll notice I'm going back over again with some of these colors. Just keep blending until we feel good. Overall, this set feels pretty nice. There's a few areas where I'm noticing, like my dark blue, that I'm not sure if this pigment binder. I'll go over that a little bit more. And we'll get that smoothed out. I'm going to start bringing in a little bit of these brighter colors. We're going to get brighter, we're going to get more vibrant, but just trying to kind of start mapping out where I want to bring in some of these bright colors. Blending a little as I go. Takes a little bit to get the pastel to a flat surface when you're working with round pastels. And the painting is going to be lightest, or the clouds are going to be the lightest sort of at the bottom here and the most vibrant, because our source of light is really down towards the bottom. So keep that in mind as you're painting, because you don't have to follow exactly what's in the reference photo, but what you want to think about is, where is my light source and how is that interacting with what's in the painting. We're going to start brightening up some of these clouds. Tend to add some pigment, brush it out, blend it out some more. We're going to keep getting a little brighter as we go. I like to really layer on. And you'll see I'm wiping my hands as I go, just so that I don't let things get too muddy. I'm gonna go one more step brighter here, because this is really much more red as we get right about with this horizon line. We're gonna add a little orange in a second too. I want this sort of bottom streak of clouds to build in some of that redness. I love this red. I have this in a few brands and it just feels like this would be beautiful for painting poppies. Let's bring in a little orange here. This little cloud here is going to transition into sort of that yellow. So adding in the orange helps kind of bridge that transition. I'm sure there's more technical terms for that, but I taught myself how to do this, so forgive me for using very layman's terms. Blending this a little bit. Let's bring in some yellow. This is going to take some trial and error. Lots of layers. This yellow is very creamy compared to some of the other ones. Still cleaning my fingers a lot when I'm working with these lighter colors, and even cleaning my pastels sometimes, because you can just get pigment on them. I keep hitting my box on my desk here. Startling me. It's sort of a left-handed problem for any of my viewers who are also left-handed. Now as I get closer to the bottom of these clouds, I'm actually just kind of coming in on the edge here. This cloud really stays pretty orange towards the bottom here. We'll come back in with our darker values in a bit. Let's bring in a little more of these sort of wispy clouds. If you've ever gotten to witness a sunset like this, it's such a gift. I live in the city, so I don't always see it as much. I'm just going to bring in some light, sort of this peachy color, because there's sort of some wispy, I don't know if they're really truly stratus clouds or not. should really work on my cloud terminology. I'm just blending these out because these are very wispy clouds. We just want to start giving the viewer a sense of what they're looking at. I'm just going to blend a little bit here. As the clouds get further away from sort of this focal point here, they get a little bit more mixed and muted in their colors. So it's okay if this starts to blend away a little bit. It's really going to be the most vibrant right here. I'm going to come back in with sort of this periwinkle. This is so fun. And the other thing is I don't want to lose too much blue here, so I may periodically just add a little more blue pigment. Wipe my hands first. You can see my rag is sort of a mess, and that's okay. I usually have 2 or 3 of these as I go. And again, if your painting feels like a bit of a mess, that's normal at this stage, so don't panic. I'm just going to keep building. If you can use a paper like a pastel mat or a UArt sanded paper, it'll take a lot of layers, so you don't have to worry as much about your painting getting too muddy too quickly. If you're using something like watercolor paper, one option, or if you're just a painter in general, if you have some gesso on hand, which people often put on canvases to prime canvas, you can do that with paper. And it actually works pretty well for creating a surface that pastels can grip to. Just bringing in some more of these wispy clouds. I think I probably need a little more blue down here, so I'm just gonna tap that in and blend. I will say I find painting these like really colorful sunsets very satisfying, but very hard. I find they often don't truly feel like they come together until the very, very end. Just sharing my experience. If you experience differently, that's awesome. Pretty vibrant down here. And the back end of this cloud is pretty dark, so I'm going to start sprinkling in some of these kind of shadows in the cloud. Don't be afraid of using a pretty dark color. The drama in clouds or even landscape is in the contrast, not necessarily using different colors, but using really varying contrasts. So we really want to give the viewer a sense of what parts of the cloud are in the shadow and what parts are in the light. Just sort of blending this out lightly with my finger. And everything I'm using is in this Paul Rubens set. Let's use this one. You don't have to get everything right the first time in clouds, like I mentioned, but this is a very iterative process. And if you don't have these exact colors, that's fine. What we're thinking about are the families of colors that are in the reference photo, and then making sure we've got a good range of values. Have some good darks, have some good bright lights, and some vibrant medium colors. And I'm going to come back over this section in a minute with darker color again. We're just building in some of these kind of little wispy areas where the sunlight's just touching different parts of this cloud. Making sure we're getting all the way to the edge here. And wiping our hands. A little more orange as we get towards the bottom here. So let's bring that in. Then the clouds that are getting a little bit of shadow here are very warm, sort of reddish color. So I'm going to start layering that in. We'll have to do some more kind of back and forth on layers, but I like to alternate back and forth a lot because it allows me to make sure I like the overall structure of my clouds. It's easy to add on layers later, but it's a little harder to fix the overall structure and composition. So that's what we focus on first. Now what I like to do when I get towards the back half of a cloud is make that darker value a cooler color. So this is a little bit more gray. I think this set would benefit from like a deep, warm purple that you can use here. If you're listening, Paul Rubens. This is probably too blue. There's sort of a nice purple coming in here. So let's do it. Cleaning my hands a lot still. Actually, go to town here for a second. Now, I've always loved being left-handed. My whole life, my mom is left-handed, my sister's left-handed. As a content creator trying to film content, sometimes being left-handed is a little annoying. To have the camera in a good view spot and be able to reach the painting. So, solidarity to all my lefties out there. think I put too much emphasis here. So let's blend. Come in a little lighter again here. And this is the first time I'm painting this sunset, so you guys are getting my truly unfiltered view of the process, because sometimes it's just not perfect. I do not always get it right the first time. Nobody really does. I think social media, probably myself included, we like to show the highlight reel, the beautifully produced video. But truthfully, behind the scenes, a lot of people have painted something several times, or it's very well edited. So you shouldn't feel bad if things take you a little bit of time. It takes us all a little bit of time. It's interesting, this pigment actually changes colors when you blend it. I don't know if that's intentional or not. It's kind of cool. It's actually closer to what I wanted in the first place. Not exactly what I expected. So let's do more of it. Must be sort of the oils in the finger that do that. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I've seen a few brands sort of make pigments like this. I don't know if it's intentional most of the time or not. Earthberry has a few that they call their chameleon pastels that lightly change pigment, not dramatically. Not quite this dramatically, this is pretty dramatic. Let's actually pull it into the back side here a little bit, because I think it's going to give me, yeah, a little more of what I want. Honestly, I want to get a little bit darker into the shadows here. I'm going to blend this out a little more than I normally would, because this is a little darker than I probably would use if I were using a different set. And then I can go back in with some lighter colors. Sort of my approach for when I don't have the exact color palette that I want, which is often with any brand at any time. I'm not blending it out fully because I like having a little bit of that texture, that looseness, because clouds themselves are sort of loose and textured. Use this sort of here. Again, if you still feel like you're in the ugly stage, that's okay. So is mine. And I think this section needs to be smoother. So I'm going to blend this a little bit. because there's sort of a dark magenta purple coming up here. Blend here a little more. Again, clouds are hard. I think people really underestimate how hard it is to get good clouds, so just bear with me. Come in with a little bit of blue in here because I think that's sort of peeking through. This is a little more periwinkle. I'm sorry you hear the delivery trucks outside. My windows are open. I live in a house from 1890, so we don't have central AC. So oftentimes my windows are open, and it's loud because I live in Boston, in the city. So I hear lots of ambulances and delivery trucks. I'm very lucky. We're lucky to have our house. A very old, slightly decrepit house. I feel like I'm getting a little closer to my structure here. Just gonna keep building. I think I've still got a little bit of this purpley coming in here. That feels nice. Let's add a little more purple to that. Again, trying to generally blend in the direction that the clouds are going. Sometimes you can't help it, but I'm gonna bring back this random friend. It seems to be a chameleon for me. I feel like I can't touch it too hard or it'll totally change. That's nice. Let's bring in a little more here. Now I feel like we're getting somewhere. If you're curious if it always takes me this long to sort of get this far, the answer is yes, regardless of what pastels I'm using. The challenge in this kind of painting with this vibrant of colors, blues and purples and yellows and oranges, is that you have a lot of colors that are all sort of intense, medium value colors, and so finding contrast and building that out can be challenging because you don't want it to get muddy, but the vibrancy is so cool. So it takes a lot of exactly what we're doing, which is layering, blending, layering, blending, and layering some blending with a little bit more layering and blending. Still cleaning my fingers lots and lots with my dry rag. Going a little bit darker in my orange here as I get closer to the horizon. Not totally blending it out anymore because I like a little bit of this texture A little bit of the mark making. Overall, this seems to be a pretty nice set for this type of sunset. I do think they would still benefit from some darker values in different hues. Still leans pretty heavily on the mid values. So Paul Rubens, DM me if you want to help. I'd love to work with you. Just coming in and adding a little more here. We're going to come back in with this dark again. We're getting closer though. Now, in this section, we've got some mid-lot values of that pink and orange and then my darker color. What I want to do is go up one value for my pinks and oranges. Let's find what I think will work. And just at the bottom where I've got some of these pinks, I'm just going to bring in a little bit of a lighter color. Help these clouds show that the light is peeking through from the bottom. I will blend that a little bit because I don't want it to be too obvious. Darkening a few areas of this. I'm going to come back in with some blue so we don't get too gray here. And blend this out actually a little bit more. A little more blue. That's nice. I'm going to add a little bit of these. There's a few sort of wispy little purpley clouds. Areas of lightness in this section that I just want to start to pull through. I think we're going to have to also do some darkening underneath this. Come in a little more here. In here. This is a section if you want to keep using your hands, it's great, but this is a great moment after using this really vibrant blues to wash your hands or use baby wipes. Sometimes you need to even dry your hand after you've used baby wipes because it can leave a little bit of moisture on your hands. Keep building in back some of my sky here. None of this is an exact science, as you've probably noticed by now. More blue. Blue here. More blue. Sort of a risk with those dark gray pigments. When you blend it in, it can kind of commandeer what's on the page. Okay, so let's get back to building this. A little bit of purple up here. Sometimes these little wisps, like wisp, a little further away can help start making it feel a little more realistic. Use my dark blue to get a little more contrast here. I am finding this dark blue to be a little harder to work with. I don't know if it's just the pigment or the binder on this particular color. I found this with a few other brands too, is that you'll have random pastels that feel totally different from other colors in a set. I don't know exactly why it is. If anybody knows, leave a comment for me, I'm curious. I suspect it's the binder and the pigment are all sort of different materials. Probably the pigment, actually. The binder is probably pretty similar. But someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to start adding in a little bit more detail here. I'm not going to blend this as much because I kind of like where this is going. Just sort of tapping. This is a spot that's got a lot of shadow right here, so it's maybe a little much. Blend that a little bit here. Sometimes you only want to use like a very small amount when pigments blend a lot. Guide the pigment where you want it to go with your finger. Another good moment to use your baby wipes, as these dark pigments can linger on your hands and make it harder to deal with some of the lighter pigments as you transition to other colors. Sort of adding in some not random, that's the wrong word, some wisps of color. This is where I'm starting to stray a little bit from my reference photo to add a little more drama, and I think this just needs a little more cohesion. And that's fine. You can stay closer to your reference photo, you can stray from it. It's art, there are no rules. And if people tell you there are lots of rules, they're made up. And you don't have to follow them. Come in a little darker here. So these are just a few of the last details that can be helpful to bring in with clouds. Adding some little highlights underneath some of these darker sections. Just some little highlights under these clouds. And it's nice to leave a little bit of texture in here because clouds are not just one smooth thing. Just going to come in with a little bit of these peaks of sky through here. I'm going to blend this one out just a little more. Just going to add in a few of these last kind of wispy clouds. Bring in a little bit of orange here. There's a little bit of this brighter gold here to highlight these. Maybe I'll highlight actually with a little bit of peach. A little more here. Slightly blending that, not too much. It's nice to have some texture. I think that's probably where I'm going to leave my clouds. Maybe a little bit more. It can be hard to know where to stop sometimes. Make sure this stays on the darker side. I'm actually going to leave this texture on. I kind of like not blending that exactly. About there. I know I just said that. It's hard to know when to stop. Maybe just a little bit along the bottom here. Just I have a little bit of yellow in here. Okay, I think we're ready for our horizon. Let's add a little yellow along the bottom here, just so this section is totally full to yellow, and we're going to go over most of this with black, but just so that this peeks through. Probably need a little bit of a lighter color to help blend that more. Let's see. Let's use a little bit of I think this might need a little orange. Being very careful to not blend upward here. So I'm going to add in some sort of light tree details, but I don't want to lose the colors that I've got. Really showing that these are backlit, kind of silhouetted. May add a little bit more to those clouds right above here.
I know I'm getting towards the end of this video, but I want to recap and say that overall, I think this is a really strong pastel set, especially if you're somebody who may not have a huge budget or you're just looking for something to sort of supplement some of the colors that you have. This is a great option. I think if you only paint landscapes that have a lot of greenery in them, it may be lacking a little bit because we just don't have as many of those warm green options in this set. But if you want to paint vibrant sunsets, if you want to paint florals, this is a great set at a great price point. They feel fairly similar to a Sennelier, and honestly, that's like all you can ask for when you're looking at a budget set of pastels. So I will link these in my Amazon store. I will link them in the description of this video. And if you've tried them, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear.